Well, I say thank you too. I have to say, a personal note here, I could not have asked for a better counsel to the inquiry. And what she has said has shown once again the importance of this inquiry and the way in which there has been a response to that importance by the collaborative efforts, the collective efforts of all of you. Thank you. This is, in all probability, the last time we shall meet here at Aldwych House. The last time that those of you who have followed proceedings more remotely can log on to hear evidence, see presentations, or hear submissions. It may well be some time before we meet again. There's something perhaps, I'm going off script a bit here, but there's something almost like an end-of-term feeling about today. And forgive me then for being just the headmaster I've occasionally been, and reminding you, please, particularly since there are so many of you here, you may want to take photographs. You know what's coming. Please be careful when you do, if you do, to make sure there is no one in the photograph who does not wish to be photographed, for obvious reasons, some of which you've just heard expressed. But you've been here, or there, throughout 4.5 years, through COVID, through lockdowns, through the challenges of ill health, through strikes, despite, in many cases, bereavement. Many of you have contributed through your statements, your evidence, your provision of documents. But let me stress that your being here or watching online in such numbers as you have has also been important. Let me tell you why I think it is so important. Nothing concentrates the mind of a speaker more than seeing and knowing that they're talking to a large number of people. True, a few may play to the gallery, no names. But for most, the knowledge that so many are so interested after so long a time tends to make them realize the importance of what they are addressing and the need to tell it as best they can. It also fully justifies the decision, even if belated, to hold a public inquiry. By definition, one in which the public has an interest. Your sheer numbers reinforces the point that the public think this is important. And it must help to bring that home to those who will in due course consider my report. Your simply being here has made a real contribution. Representatives of NHS bodies, the devolved administrations, politicians, civil servants, lawyers, clinicians, interested experts, Scottish, Northern Irish, Welsh, have also all contributed in their own way, I suppose I should add the English, to what I'd asked should be a collective endeavour. And in my judgment, it has broadly been that, even with the odd wrinkle. And I'd like to thank you, all of you, for that. Well, as you know, as Ms. Richards has kept reminding me the last half hour, I must now turn to writing the full report. Now, I can't tell you at this stage precisely when the report will be published. I wish I could. But I'll tell you what I do know, and it's this. The process of writing the report will inevitably take some time. Time to weigh the submissions with the evidence, time to resolve issues where the evidence is not clear-cut, and time to make the report as readable as I can. The report will not be short. Well, how could it be, given everything that we've heard? But it will be as short as I can make it, whilst doing justice to the evidence and the submissions which I've heard and read, and to the breadth of the terms of reference. And it will be as quick to produce as I can. Now, where there's a particular topic that interests you, I intend you should be able to go to the relevant chapter to find the answers you're looking for, and I hope that it will be an engaging read. There will, of course, be an overview so that you can quickly get a summary of my findings and recommendations, and so that members of the press can explain what we have collectively learned to the rest of the country. Beyond the writing of the report itself, there's a further part of the process which is required by statute. The inquiry rules require it, but I would, in any event, have considered it necessary in fairness. It is that where there is to be explicit or significant criticism in the report, and there will be criticism, that the person due to be criticised is told of what I intend to say and of the factual basis underpinning it, so that they can respond if they wish. Now, the process is not only fair, but it also reduces the possibility of challenge to the report. From the start, we've designed the inquiry's processes to avoid unnecessary delay at this stage. We've seen Ms. Richards and her team put areas of potential criticism to witnesses, both for them to answer in their written statements and in hearings. I don't anticipate that many witnesses or organisations will be surprised by the terms in which they are criticised, if they are. But I do have to allow a reasonable time for them to consider in confidence the criticisms that I propose to make, and for me to consider any responses received. Well, as we know, some of our witnesses are old, some are not in good health, and so I must make due allowance for that, particularly if there's more than one criticism to be made. But I can assure you that I will allow no more time than is reasonable. Now, I know that many of you will want to make plans outside the inquiry, and so I can say this, that the report will not be published before the autumn. Ms. Richards has persuaded me that July is likely to be too ambitious, and I think she's right, and that later in the year will be more realistic. It won't be August, since Parliament will not be sitting then, so in short, the best estimate I can give you is autumn. It's always been my intention to be as quick as reasonable thoroughness permits. Time is not a luxury I can squander. I assure you that I'll be writing the report as fast as I can, and that Ms. Richards and her team will be handling the warning letter process for me with their usual efficiency. I can also promise that we'll give you plenty of notice about when the report will be published, so that those of you who wish to come together and attend in person on that day are able to do so. Let me turn from the autumn to these last 3 weeks. First, I should say that the written submissions and these 3 weeks of oral submissions, mainly but not only from those who are representing institutions or groups of core participants, they've all been of great value to me. They've helped to highlight what has been most important to each of you. The written submissions have expressed it, the oral submissions have summarised it. I should add that if you'd asked me at the start of these 3 weeks whether each speaker would be able to contain what they had to say within their allotted time slots, well, you might imagine what I would have said. It's often much more difficult to condense, to précis what you think and why you think it. It's something of an art. I'm not sure I would have had it as an advocate, but I'm glad to say I would have, in this case, been proved wrong. And I'd like to thank each and all of those who made submissions orally for respecting almost to the minute, the timetable. It was drawn up to ensure that the time available was shared fairly between everyone who wanted to speak, and by keeping within your slots, no one took unfair advantage. So thank you. Many of the submissions, in writing or orally, asked me to make another interim report about compensation. You heard that general point touched upon by Mr. Steen this morning. I'll need to reflect on the submissions, especially those that point out that as little time as possible should be lost before finalising arrangements for compensation. I want to tell you that I have written to the Paymaster General to inform him of my intention to make a further interim report about the framework for compensation. I anticipate that I'll be in a position to do so before Easter, if not earlier. We'll aim to tell you a week before publication when more precisely it is coming. The report will be shared with our contact list and published on the inquiry website. Finally, I want to come back to what I said when I started these few words. I would like to thank you for the spirit in which you followed the inquiry proceedings in whatever way you have, here in person, online, through the inquiry emails and wider media. I thank you with sincere appreciation for making this a collective endeavour, for the warmth with which you support one another, and for your kind words about the inquiry team and its process. Thank you all, individually and collectively. Thank you and goodbye for now.